Really in California in the mid-1800s. They were Chinese, it was Chinese temple Buddhism, several different kinds. Likely, most likely, related to Pure Land, which is similar to which is a more basic form than Jodo Shin, which is referred to as true Pure Land. And that was innovated in the 12th and 13th century by Shinran. So with that, there are a few other names I'll be bringing up as we move along. One is George Lucas. So I mentioned Frank Baum. He's one end of the bookends. The other is George Lucas, the innovator and developer of the Star Wars series. And there are many others who I think have influenced Buddhist culture. Another one that you will all recognize right away, another Californian, by the way. By the way, Baum wrote most of his books in Hollywood. He was from the Midwest, but after The Wizard of Oz was published and he made a lot of money over the next 2 years, he immediately moved to Hollywood and started to try and make silent movies. So, Baum, Lucas, and the current governor of California, Jerry Brown. So, as we go along, you might ask yourself, how is it that the developer of the most popular series of movies, consistently in the history of movie making, and the governor of California today are both Buddhists? Why do you suppose that is? Was that just because they stumbled onto it after they were adults? Or is there something in American culture, something that maybe each one of you recognized and felt when you first heard about Buddhism? Something intuitive, something that you thought, well, I know that already, and it appealed to you. So that's the question you can ask yourself. So with that, I'll try to tie together some of the ideas and loose ends. This is a short quote, which I don't usually do, but I want to start off. This is from a recent biography called Finding Oz by Evan Schwartz. And it's a great biography. I highly recommend it if anybody's interested in a good history of the Midwestern United States and pretty much all of our culture from about 1860 until Frank Baum's death, and then after to some degree. Embedded in this very short passage, which Baum had written in an article, are nothing less than the Four Noble Truths, the foundation of Buddhist mindfulness, which, like theosophy, which is what he was, a theosophist, is a practice aimed at purifying the soul. To live is to suffer. That is the first truth, as Baum saw it. Frank's letter was an expression of this understanding. Suffering is caused by clinging, by attachment to certain things or ideas. Frank invoked the second truth in a universal way, saying we are all prone to attachments. But there exists a possibility to end one's suffering. This is the third truth. Though you don't have to die in order to release yourself from suffering and clinging. That was an innovation of Buddhism. The possibility exists in the here and now, at any time in this life. Finally, there is a path leading to liberation and bliss. The fourth truth is fleshed out in great detail. That's the Eightfold Path. It's often called, and I'll paraphrase from this point on, Buddha's Golden Road. This road to self-awareness and enlightenment is also central to Hinduism and theosophy. And it goes on to point out that this road leads to the Pure Land, or to a Pure Land. There are many Pure Lands in Buddhism. So we focus on that in this particular denomination. So great biography. I highly recommend it. So I hope somebody finds that. A couple of other show and tells. This is about the 7th or 8th book of Baum's. He wrote 14 Oz books altogether. This one's called Tick-Tock of Oz. And he wrote this in 1913, after he wrote a musical play, which had a pretty good run. And there was such a demand for it that he repeated it, that he wrote the book. He would always write at the beginning. The children all over the world were writing letters to Oz for more books. And they did. And so he responded with the book. In this book, you'll see on the front, this fat clockwork man known as Tick-Tock. He's probably, I think Isaac Asimov and Ray Bradbury have both acknowledged, Ray Bradbury particularly is a great fan of Oz, and attributes many of his ideas to his readings in Oz. And Bradbury also wrote a book called The Zen of Writing. So you see lots of little connections. First Robot. He also has in here a connection where the Scarecrow is calling home from across this deadly desert with a cell phone. So it's basically a little wireless gadget, not any bigger than this. It was a wireless telephone. So he was the head of all of us. Head of Star Trek, which I think was probably where a lot of the early ideas for that kind of phone came from. Before we start, I want to offer one more idea for everyone to get today. When we think about popular culture, when we think about Buddhism and popular culture, that doesn't mean it's less. So I want to offer you several, I just thought these up, so you can think of some of your own. Several categories of how to think about Buddhism. What is Buddhism? What does it mean? What does it mean to you? So I'll offer you a few that I thought of, and you can dream up your own. One of them is cultural Buddhism. Dr. Matsunaga, our good teacher, thought of himself as a scholastic Buddhist, but also as a cultural Buddhist. If you ask him what the Eightfold Path was, he would probably be like D.T. Suzuki and say, I don't remember, look it up. So that's one, he didn't know, of course, because he taught it. But that wasn't his point. His point was that you live it. So that's one way to think about your Buddhist life. Do you live a life of the heart, of kindness? So that's what the Oz books are all about. And that was Baum's message all the way through. Another one is formalism, formalistic teaching. And that means well-defined, clear, here's the Eightfold Path, right thought, right understanding, right effort, right action, right speech, right mindfulness, and all the rest. Look it up. And that's the Eightfold Path. Cultural, formal. I tend to be a formalist because I also guide people in meditation, but I want to make sure they're ethically grounded and understand that there are some baselines. So I tend to explain that. But it doesn't define Buddhism. It's just one approach. Another one is a nominalist. That just basically means you call yourself a Buddhist. I know this fellow I see in the grocery all the time, and he lectures me on Buddhism every time I see him. But really, he's sort of a Christian fundamentalist, and he's got kind of mixed up. But I listen. He's convinced that he's a Buddhist. So from his point of view, he's a nominal Buddhist. He is that. So you might think of that. Are you a Buddhist? Or do you just enjoy coming here to think of yourself as a Buddhist? You name yourself as a Buddhist. So that's another way to think of Buddhism. Some of the people who did that were the beat writers. They all called themselves Buddhists. I'm not sure whether they lived lives of Buddhism or not. A lot of them took drugs. A lot of them basically committed suicide with drugs early in their lives. They ended their lives early. Was that Buddhist? Mm-hmm. But they had high ideals. They had great hopes for everyone. They read all the great sutras. They were very imaginative. There were a lot of Buddhist poetry. So it's an interesting